was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? The king will reply, Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. Matthew 25:35-40. Thousands of babies wailed under the blazing Ethiopian sun, desperately seeking nourishment from their mothers' breasts. 3-year-olds were so severely malnourished they could not stand, much less crawl or walk, their pencil-thin legs so frail they could be snapped like twigs. Drinking water was nearly non-existent, a 4-hour walk each way. Crops had failed in the scorched fields, and the sun had so thoroughly baked the hand-dug collecting ponds that the earth had cracked. It was 1984, and nearly 1 million Ethiopians had already perished in the famine. I was sitting in a feeding station, holding a dying baby in my arms, surrounded by thousands of desperate, starving people. I looked around at the squalid camp conditions, at the bloated bellies of the children, at the suffering faces of their mothers. Disease and despair stalked everyone there. How did a guy who had scarcely ever been out of the United States, a congressman who had run on transportation issues, the son of a Philadelphia policeman, end up in a place like this? Earlier that year, the BBC had broken the story of a terrible famine ravaging Ethiopia, which the Mengistu government had tried to keep secret. Record low rains were in large part responsible for the famine, and the problem was exacerbated by the cost of fighting off various rebellions. As well, the Ethiopian government did not prepare well for famine relief. I had spent a lot of time campaigning that year, and one day in October, I was at the Department of Motor Vehicles at Bailey's Crossroads. A young woman working for World Vision came up to me. Have you seen on television what's going on in Ethiopia? She asked. Yes, I have, I replied. Would you go to Ethiopia and see for yourself? She asked. I said I would like to. I was reminded of that conversation 2 months later, after the election, when my friend, Tony Hall, a Democratic member of Congress from Ohio, called me up. I just got back from Ethiopia. People are dying all over the place. You gotta go too, he said. I won't be able to help them unless I have a partner, and I need you to be my partner. The reality of life in Congress is that if you want to get anything substantive done, you have to partner with someone on the other side of the aisle. Before deciding what could best be done, I wanted to see for myself how dire the famine was and how deep the suffering. Members and senators frequently take trips like this when they involve issues important to them or their constituents. In addition, America gives billions in foreign aid around the world, including in Ethiopia. Those who authorize it have a responsibility to keep an eye on how the money is being spent, or misspent, as the case may be. I had just gotten on the Appropriations Committee, which appropriates money for foreign aid. I naively went to the ranking Republican member, Silvio Conti, who approved my trip. Without a second thought, I jumped on a plane all by myself, no staff, and flew to Rome. There I spent the night and then flew out to Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. I'd never been outside of the United States except for trips to Canada and Germany, and I really had no idea what I was getting into. This was still the time of the Cold War, and, following the overthrow of Emperor Haile Selassie a decade earlier, Ethiopia was being run by a communist dictatorship. An embassy staffer drove me to my hotel, directly across from which was the Cuban military post, where I saw Cuban forces wandering around with their guns. After checking into my room, the first thing I did was to go to the hotel's restaurant and order some pizza. A Washington Post reporter named Blaine Harden was there, covering the famine, and he spotted me. He proceeded to write an article mentioning that the congressman from Northern Virginia was, in the midst of a famine, cooling his heels in the Addis Ababa Hilton and eating a pizza in the Hilton's pizzeria. Well, Italy used to control Ethiopia, and so it wasn't surprising that you could find pizza there. But Harden made it sound like I was on vacation. We later got to know each other, and he wrote a very nice piece about my human rights work. The next morning, I went to see the Deputy Chief of Missions from the U.S. Embassy. I want to go to the hunger area, I announced. The embassy people hadn't been up there, and they didn't